Hi, thanks for joining me with Wilderness with Amani. I want to say a few things about surviving freezing wet weather conditions if you're new to backpacking, or if you've never backpacked in October, late September, in high country above 10,000 feet. My rule of thumb is this. I know that the temperatures are going to be getting down into the 30s and 20s or even teens. If I see on the weather forecast that there's a 10% chance of precipitation, snow or rain, I consider that a 100% chance. Because once you get wet, it doesn't matter whether it's raining 100% or 10% is 1,000% if you're soaking wet and you're not prepared. That can mean death. So I'm going to go over a few things that I do to prepare for freezing wet weather to make sure that I always make it out from where I'm backpacking. A place where I like to get my weather forecast, and I don't know if it's the best place, I go to a site called weatherforyou.com, and it seems to have, if I put in Cottonwood Lakes, it seems to have some kind of a forecast that gives me an idea. So that gives me a chance. The first rule of thumb when you're dealing with freezing wet weather, and in backpacking in general, is if it says cotton on the tag, you do not want to have it as part of your repertoire. I myself wear jeans all the time. You'll see it in my fishing clips. And the reason I do that is because my main goal is to go fishing, and I'm breaking through brush and I'm sliding around on granite, and I'm always one of those guys that wants to get to the hard to reach places. And jeans just do good to keep my legs from getting all gouged up and my pants from getting torn. But to do that, I have to carry a lot of gear. I carry 3 changes of clothes with me when I go backpacking. But I'm not like a lot of you. Look, here's what my pack looks like for a 48-hour trip. So this might be called overkill for a 48-hour trip. In order for me to get into trouble, I have so much gear here, I would need to fall into the lake twice, lose all of my wet weather gear, and then have it start snowing and not stop snowing for 2 days in order for me to get into trouble. But anyway, I got everything but the kitchen sink in here. What, you need a spare bowling ball? I got one right here for you. But, I just want to be cautious. I'm only up here for 48 hours, but basically there's nothing that can happen to me with this. Because with this, I got everything I need to back myself up if things go wrong, and if I find somebody who's in distress, I have enough stuff in here to clothe an entire person after I fall in the water. So it's all good to go. It's better to be safe than sorry, that's what I always say. Okay, for most of you, that is ridiculous. A lot of people are looking at that going, that guy's crazy. My pack is 70 to 80 pounds usually, but I don't hike more than 4 or 5 miles with that main pack, and then I have another pack in this pack where I keep a change of clothes and everything I need while I'm out fishing for the day. And the reason I have to always make sure I'm ready to be wet is because when you're fishing, you're always around water. So that's something you want to consider. If you're going to start fishing, you might want to start thinking like it's always going to be raining. So rule number 1, you want clothes, especially if you're like most people that are going to backpack. If you're someone that's going to go and you're going to hike 10 miles and make a camp, and then you're going to hike another 15 miles and make a camp, and you're going to do like a 100-mile loop, you're not going to be able to bring as much gear as I do, so you're going to have to pack a lot lighter. So you're going to want clothes that are synthetic and moisture wicking and quick drying when you go, and you want to be ready. So I wowould say this is one of those situations where you don't want to be like me when you see all the cotton that I wear. because I'm over prepared, and most rational people aren't going to carry as much stuff as I do. So I'm just going to go into a few things that I do to keep myself safe in freezing wet weather, to make sure that I come out in one piece, to make sure that I don't come out with frostbitten fingers and toes, and to make sure that I can stay dry when the weather gets wet. If you're new to backpacking, you're going to read a lot of different things about what you want to do to prepare for freezing wet weather. I'm just doing this to show you what I do so that perhaps You can take a little bit from what I'm telling you, combine it with some other stuff, and build your own decision on what you want to do to prepare for freezing wet weather. The one thing you always have to remember when you are going into the high country in September, October, and you're going to be dealing with these freezing cold temperatures that you may or may not be used to, you're going to live or you're going to die with the decisions you make from the time you're sitting in your house or your apartment or wherever you live packing your pack to the decisions you make while you're out on the trail. You're going to make calls and decisions, and when things get rough and you get in whiteout snow conditions, which it's hit me a couple times, those decisions are everything's gonna be in the summation of those decisions are gonna determine how comfortable you're gonna be, and possibly even whether you make it out in one piece. So I always say, err on the side of caution, be cautious. I haven't always been like this. A lot of times I said, I'll probably be all right, and sometimes you're gonna make calls when you go backpacking as you get further into it and you get more experience, and you're gonna see that. So I'm not saying everybody should do things like I do it, because I carry a lot of stuff that most people aren't willing to carry. so travel light, leave the cotton at home if you're going to be dealing with freezing wet weather, and be safe out there. So here are the things that I do to make sure that I'm prepared for freezing wet weather, and hopefully some of these suggestions might add to your eventual repertoire of what you do when you're out doing your own thing. So my choice for top to bottom being dry is I start with the foundation of high waterproof boots. I always wear high waterproof boots because I just like dry feet. Even in the summer, I always carry rain pants on me. These are Columbia. They're really good. They'll keep your legs dry underneath good. And then I carry this fairly heavy West Marine third reef jacket. This thing keeps you bone dry. You put a hood on. It's got double sleeves that you can cinch shut. It's got pull cord so you can cinch the bottom. This thing's made for hanging off the side of America One yacht and getting sea spray. So I carry this thing with me because if I'm going to be out fishing in the rain for hours, I want to be dry, and I got to be dry. And so with this setup here, I can stay outside dry for hours. There's a lot of choices. There's a lot lighter stuff for you that are going to be backpacking. Large loops, of course. I mean, this thing isn't made for backpacking. This is just made to be dry. And it's heavy, but you saw my pack. Heavy doesn't even factor into my decision making. So I like to have a complete suit of armor ready to go if I'm going to be up in the high country, above 8,000, 9,000 feet, starting late September to October. So that's what I do. I'm not saying it's what you should do. I mean, if you don't think there's going to be a lot of rain and you're going to make that decision, a good poncho that you can cinch shut with a bungee cord or something to make sure no water gets under it. But I would definitely recommend always carrying some kind of rain pants, because rain pants don't weigh anything. So I say, why not have them just in case? And they block the wind great too. You're going to want to keep your backup clothes dry. So if you do get wet, whatever you have is ready to go, dry and set. You can keep your backup clothes dry as simple as putting a 8-gallon trash bag, put your clothes in that, and then put that inside of a stuffed sack and pack that. That way, no matter what, you could fall into a river, you're gonna have dry clothes. Me, because I like to wear jeans, because of the durability when I'm breaking through brush and on granite, I carry 3 changes of clothes with me. Reference the giant pack I have. And if you're gonna start fishing, sometimes you're gonna hike a mile or two away from camp. If you fall into the water, you're gonna be wet. I make sure I have a complete change of clothes in my day fishing pack. You'll see in a lot of my fishing clips, I have the smaller tactical pack, and I carry that in my main pack with me. And what I do with that is I keep my clothes inside of a dry sack. And dry sacks are great. This thing is 30 liters. I don't know. I'm American. I like gallons and pints, things that have no relation to one another. I like yards and feet and inches. Nothing that has any relevance. But this is a 30-liter bag, and you can fill this thing with stuff, with all your clothes, and then you can roll it up, and then you just clip it shut. And what's great about this style of dry bag, it's very durable, it comes with straps, so you can wear it as a backpack. So if you want to have something that you can use as a day pack when you're backpacking, just get a dry sack, because you can fit a stove, you can fit food, you can fit everything you want in this thing, and you're ready to go. I mean, this thing's ready for action. So I'm saying, I advise everybody to get a dry sack. I use these a lot in my boat because I keep my extra jackets and stuff in them when there's a lot of chop on the lake. But these dry sacks are great. But like I said, this isn't necessary, because you can't just put your stuff in a trash bag, stick it in a stuff sack. The bottom line is, if you get soaking wet, you want whatever your backup clothes are to be bone dry. Then you can put your rainproof stuff on over it, and you're armored up. And then if you have a chance to dry your clothes out later, dry them out. If you're in a place where you can make a fire and you can dry your clothes, then you're set. You can dry your extra socks. Like I said, bring extra socks. But I advise these dry sacks for everybody. And that's a big step I take, is making sure that whatever dry clothes I have, I just don't put them in a stuff sack and put them in my pack. I don't just put them in my pack. I just make sure they're in something that's waterproof. You want some kind of waterproof solution to keep your backup clothes in, to make sure that if they get wet, if you're on an extended trip. And once again, I don't do extended trips. If you're going to go on an extended trip in the backcountry, you got to be ready to go in case crazy weather, because weather in a place up here, I mean, I'm at 11,000 feet. Weather happens in the blink of an eye up here, and if you only need to get wet for 2 minutes, and that will set the course for the next week if you're not prepared. So it is what it is. But these dry sacks are great. You can just roll these up. You can roll up in water. I mean, you can scrunch an extra one of these up and just stuff that in your pack like that, and it doesn't weigh much at all. And that's a day pack right there. It's a waterproof day pack. And I would get one of these before you go on your first trip if you're new to backpacking. Another key component I feel that is important are socks. I'm only up for 48 hours on this trip. I got 6 pairs of socks. If you're out on an extended period of time and you're going to be dealing with freezing temperatures, wet weather, your feet have to be dry. You cannot have wet feet. And that goes back to the waterproof high ankle boots that I like to wear. I don't even mess around with wet feet. The reason I carry 6 pairs of socks is I wear 2 pairs at the same time. I wear a lighter, weather-friendly set of socks underneath my big, heavy, these are Redhead brand. You get them at Bass Pro Shops. Redhead's a good brand that I like because it's designed by hunters, and it's something that when you're walking through marshy stuff, you just want to be dry. So I wear both of these socks at the same time. I wear this underneath this and that. If you're camping up in the high country and you're backpacking and you're in freezing temperatures, if your boots are damp when you go to bed, you're going to wake up and they're going to be frozen solid. So by having this extra layer of socks underneath, if my boots have any moisture on the inside, if I step too deep in some marshy water stuff and some water gets inside of them, this outer layer can protect my feet from that any residual moisture inside my boots, and then the inside layer can keep my feet dry. You don't want wet feet. You can't have wet feet. And if you're backpacking up in the high country above 10,000 feet, a lot of times you can't have a fire. So if you can't dry your socks out, you better have extra socks. I mean, that's the only answer. And once again, you want waterproof boots. Not water resistant, you want waterproof. I like boots that I could use when I'm using my boat and I can step into water up to my ankles and push my boat off and my feet are still dry. That's the measure that I use for how good the boots are and what I'm going to be able to survive with. You don't want wet feet. I have a friend who back in college was camping in freezing temperatures and his feet got numb and his feet were wet for days. And 10 years later, he still really hadn't gotten all the feeling back in his toes. 10 years later. I don't know what the status is now, but 10 years not feeling your toes from one trip, that's lasting. You can lose your toes if your toes get frozen to a certain extent if you're backpacking. I mean, if you're 20, 30 miles, I never backpack more than 5 miles in or 6 miles in. I'm 7 miles in on this trip up at Cottonwood Lakes. But a lot of you that get into hardcore backpacking, you're going to go far into the backcountry, and you're not going to experience this stuff when you're backpacking at like 6,000, 7,000 feet in the summertime. You go backpacking up in October, it's a whole nother story. You don't want to lose your toes. Your toes aren't fancy like your fingers, but your toes definitely play a role. You want to protect your feet. Your feet are your foundation, and that's where it all starts and stops with me, feet. So one final option that I'll talk about is the ability to make fire. In the worst case scenario for yourself, or if you encounter somebody that hasn't been able to fill their feet for a day, they may need a fire. If it's an illegal area to have a fire, if you can't fill your feet for a day, I say I'm going to have to take a ticket on that one and save my feet, or save someone's feet. So what I do is I make sure that if I'm in a wet, snowy, rainy conditions and it's freezing out, I can make fire in a snap. There's a lot of different ways that you can make an emergency fire. My preferred method is a lighter. Because to me, knowing how to make a fire from scratch is more of a hobby than anything. If you're wet and you're cold and it's getting dark and you're 3 miles away from camp and you're shivering and you're already getting hypothermic, you need to make a fire in a jiffy. And if everything's wet, you're not going to have time, the energy, or the resources to do it. So what I do is I keep a fire kit in my backpack at all times. And I keep one of them in my fishing pack because often I'm fishing miles away from where my base camp is, where I set up when I'm backpacking, and I keep one in my main pack. So no matter where I am, I always have the fire kit, and I always have a change of fresh clothes. I have a change of fresh clothes in my fishing pack, and I have a change of fresh clothes in my main pack. So what I call a fire kit is I keep the hard stuff to find. So this is my fire kit. Yes, officers, it's a fire kit. So what it is in the outside Ziploc bag, I put super dry grass and small sticks to use as kindling and a mini Bic lighter. I roll that up in a bag, a Ziploc bag. So if I go in the water, this thing's going to be dry. Then in another Ziploc bag, I cut a little piece off of a Duraflame log. It's very small. It's about the size of a silver dollar. It's a little hunk. And this is basically just sawdust soaked in kerosene, I think. So I have this little piece of a Duraflame log, or some kind of a fire starting log, and I wrap that up in a bag, the little sandwich bag. Then I put them in a little bit of a larger bag, roll that up, weighs nothing. I throw this in my pack, in the base of my pack, and I just leave it there. And it's always in there. I've never had to use it. I put one of these in my fishing pack too. It's always in there. Never had to use it. Doesn't take up any space, but if I have to make fire in a hurry, it's good. Now, you're going to be able to find around the base of trees, the sticks and the twigs that are dead at the base of trees, even if there's snow all over the ground and it's been raining, those are usually dry, so you'll be able to get the next size up. You can also find dry wood in a hurry. If you can find fallen logs, the branches that are sticking up are typically dry. You can snap those off. And if you're in an area with large expanses of granite, any wood sitting on rocks is usually a lot drier than anything sitting on the forest floor. So you can get a fire going, but this is the foundation. The stuff in this bag, in a life-saving situation where your life or limb is at risk, is unavailable when you're out in the mountains and it's been snowing or it's been raining and everything's wet. You can get this in your backyard probably or on the side of the road when you're at home in about 10 seconds. And you can put this in a bag and you can always have it with you, and you never have to worry about, okay, do I have to find the right kind of bark, or I need to find some moss that works and I got to gather this. You're shivering. You need to get this bag out, put this in between a couple rocks, snap some dry branches and get a fire going quickly. This is what's going to save your life. You're going to be ready. If you want to get hardcore and go caveman, make some kind of bow drill or something, that's awesome. I mean, I'm all for it. I guess that's a good skill to have. For me, I keep this so I have a lighter in my pack. I got a lighter in that pack, and then I keep a lighter in my pocket that I use for my stove. So I got 3 lighters, and when lighters get wet, you can just you can dry them off. But when you have the lighter in this triple Ziploc bag, it's going to be dry no matter what. So you're going to be able to make fire at base camp. You're going to be able to make fire wherever you're fishing. Like I said, I've been back like 30 years. I've never had to make an emergency fire to save my life. But the day I don't have it is the day that I'm going to need it. So that's something that's totally optional. I am an overcautious individual, especially the older I'm getting and the more that I've seen and the more close calls that I've had, the more precaution I take before I go into the mountains. So if you're new to backpacking, this is just maybe one more thing you might want to consider. You might want to say, the old man's crazy. He doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. And in a lot of ways, you're probably right. So I hope that helps save somebody someday or gives you some kind of sense of security when you're out in the high country, especially when you're going to be dealing with freezing wet temperatures. So I hope my tips are useful to some people. Just always remember, when you're looking at information and you're researching stuff like this, always make sure that you look at a couple sources. I mean, I'm telling you, I am far from perfect. I've just got a lot of experience. A lot of my preparation is based on paranoia of being caught in the wrong circumstances unprepared. So you could probably get better advice that I could give, but that doesn't mean that all of the advice that I give is useless, and it doesn't mean that all of the advice that I give is all the advice that you need. And that's a good rule of thumb that you can look at for everything that you get. When you're looking online or you're reading about it somewhere or you're getting information from somebody, there's a lot of different points of view on how to do things, and it's going to be up to you to make the best decisions for you and for the type of backpacking that you do. The one thing I will say, if you're someone who's never really fished and you're going to say, I really want to start fishing when I backpack, you always want to consider having the things that you need with you if you're going to be hiking miles away from your base camp, because you can have the best things available for you at your camp, but if you hike to a lake 3 miles away and it's getting sundown and you get wet and you get cold, the stuff that you have at your camp isn't going to do any good for you. So you're going to, look at the dry sack solution that I had. You could have everything you need with you on a day hike 10 miles away and you're good to go. So consider that stuff. I hope that my information on how I prepare to survive freezing wet weather helps you, and it's worked for me. Maybe some of it will work for you. Maybe all of it will work for you. Maybe you just say the old man's nuts. I don't know. I have no idea. But thanks for joining me with Wilderness with Amani, and stay safe out there in freezing, wet temperatures.